time to talk Survivor. We dropped the 4 and kept the 2. And now you've come to get our take, so this is what we'll do. John will make himself laugh, Andy's talking just won't stop. The backup hosts, they're adequate, but at least this song's a bop. For reasons undetermined, we're still cutting this song short. It's the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast.
Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I am John. My co-host is Andy. We are talking Survivor Season 42, Episode 11, and we've drawn the Purple Rock, which means we are ready to play. It's do or die time, Andy. Are you ready for the game of chance that is speaking into a microphone on the internet?
I think if you polled the Survivor fandom internet and asked them which Survivor podcast really makes you think of players, they wouldn't know what that means because they're incredible dorks. But they might also say us.
Yeah, I obviously super pumped to see a Purple Rock on Survivor. But at the same time, that it signifies expending effort, just really defying our ethos there.
Yeah, really, it should have been the reverse. You draw purple, that means you're not doing anything. Like, it gets us. That's a shout out.
Yep,
right there.
Exactly. Yeah, then I would have felt like, oh no, I feel seen now. But I don't know. This could have just been a dig if they know us.
So, which one of us is the Jonathan and which one of us is the Lindsay? And frankly, which would you take offense for?
I mean, I'm constantly talking about my macros that I got to hit, so I guess I have to be the Jonathan. You know, my caloric intake. We have a whole Slack channel where I just break down every meal that I eat and how many calories I'm consuming, and then compare that to yours while none of you give any shits whatsoever about it. So that's a very big Jonathan vibe, I think.
Yeah, and then myself and Lindsay are both carbon-based individuals. I don't know if I have a lot in common with Lindsay.
You have both stood still. So that's a thing that you have in common. I mean, she stood still on that challenge. So
I don't know if I could do it for like 10 minutes. Oh my God.
I mean,
just thinking about it, just talking about it gets me tired.
Still just the commonality of standing, you've got that. So there's some overlap.
Do or die, man. Are you excited?
Oh, so pumped. How'd you like this episode, by the way?
I loved it. It was great. Good times. A lot of fun stuff. No notes.
Well, one note. I will never accept losing Drea. Fucking heartbreaking. And we'll get more into that later, but I agree with you though. Overall, great episode. Lots of fun. Despite the sword of Damocles hanging overhead that could have easily spoiled the fun. So we should move on to discussing that particular sword. The do or die challenge, which threatened to ruin all the fun that we got out of this episode. What did you think about that one?
It made the episode for me because I got what I wanted. How about that Monty Hall problem, though, folks? Oh God, it was amazing. I might have woke people up from laughing so hard. It was fantastic. Last week I said I wanted somebody to know the Monty Hall problem and do it and fail. But no, the inverse worked well too, especially since we still got Math Boy sitting there being like, always swap, because somehow the math works out that 66% of the time it works 100% of the time. But no, math fails. You guys got to hit it now 6 times in a row for your math to work out. I don't have to do anything. Suck it, math.
Dude, score 1 for not doing math. I did enjoy that it was Roxroy sitting over there go with your gut, bro. And then I was like, well, the logical thing here is obviously going to switch now.
I read this in the statistics. No! Screw your numbers. Trust your gut.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I mean, I feel like Probst himself was like, yeah, come on, fuck them math nerds. Stick with your gut. And then, the fact that Lindsay is like, yeah, I gotta stick with what my gut is telling me. And Jeff was like, yeah, this is good content right here.
Her gut was telling her 2 different things. It's like, I have a backup plan.
Yeah, that's not how guts work.
No, apparently, see? She knew. She just knew so much that one of them wasn't it. And that was the one you nerds wanted her to switch to. That's why you're in the lockers and she's out there on the football field.
I mean, are they even in the lockers? I don't even know if they showed up for class. And they were like, oh, gym? Oh, fuck this. I'm sick. I'm going home.
Well, I think they get shoved into like the lockers in the hall.
Oh, okay. Oh, see, I was thinking we had to go to gym class.
They're not in the locker room. No.
Oh, God. It did seem like just wildly out of the norms. All right. So anyway, my big concern here, of course, is that like aside from the smack in the face that probability and statistics and math all received, we genuinely could have had that episode ruined
by math. We could have had it ruined by math, in fact.
Well, yeah, so by a quote-unquote successful iteration of this from their perspective, which would be like, oh, wow, the do-or-die thing worked and we sent someone home from that. That would have been a fucking terrible end to the episode. It would have ended with no drama. But at the same time, you totally subvert your entire gimmick because we can see clocks. We know how much time is left, right? So I'm watching the episode and they get to tribal with 15 minutes left. I'm like, okay, well, I guess she doesn't go home. I was convinced she did until they got to tribal that soon. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess not now.
Yeah, it's less of a problem for me because I don't watch it live, so I don't have like a clock like telling me. But there's a commercial break in which I fast forward through, and that's like, unless they got a lot to talk about before she's going there, I think I know how this goes. Right. So more than anything else, more than how this is a complete inversion of the way the game works, more than if you're not invested in telling statistic nerds to sit back down, watching somebody pick boxes isn't that interesting. More than that it could completely undo all of the strategic value of an episode. It's bad because time spoils the result.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like really it spoils the entertainment product here in that you've sucked the drama out of it because I know that you're not going to do a song and dance routine for 12 minutes and then have Lindsay pick the wrong box and go home.
No, I mean, also I would like it to go away because then it'll have the Monty Hall problem will have a 100% failure rate. Like I don't need any more turns. Like, although again, to remind everyone that even if the Monty Hall way that you say is the way you have to do it every time pays off like 2 more times in a row, it's still not what you guys say it is. It really has to go deep now because math.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works when we judge 1-by-1 scenarios. I want it to go away because it just doesn't work for the time. We know what's going to happen. So I think it's going to come back though.
It actually kind of reminds me.
I think they loved what they got.
Well, it kind of reminds me of one of my favorite Randy Moss quotes, "Tails never fails." It's just like the best quote because
nothing beats good old rock. I mean,
it really is just like, okay. I mean, that's certainly one way to look at it. But yeah, I don't know that they necessarily bring this back. I think they have been kind of sensitive to online feedback in the past. And obviously, we only see one realm of online feedback. We're not diving into Reddit or Facebook or anything like that. But it was not positive feedback for this little twist.
Yeah, but I think they loved the one-on-one competition. Like, I think that just got them so charged up. It's like two people.
The Lindsay versus Jonathan part.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But, I mean, I feel like you can engineer that in other ways other than a do-or-die. Like, you could manufacture that by, whatever it might be. Like you can sit out and maybe you get an advantage and then like, oh shit, well, I'm just going to sit out. And then it's 1-on-1 for immunity. Sure. Something like that.
I've been thinking about it. And it's like, I don't mind the idea that the first out receives some form of punishment. I don't like that punishment being potential exit from the game because that's just not interesting to me, like a way to end an episode or end somebody's time on Survivor. But I kind of like it. Like, obviously they're doing. Yeah, I think that could be good. Like, I and where it doesn't work is like Lindsay, like isn't that person that needed to be punished. Like when that scenario sets up, it's like, man, she's gonna do awesome. She's just or like whoever finishes second. Of course, we don't know who that was gonna be. Legit going into the competition, it's like either of them could do better in this specific competition. It didn't favor either one of them. But it's like, the second place at a 2, that's not what I want is like that hapless loser who doesn't do well at all. I want them to suffer for it, every once in a while. Yeah. Like, I think there's fairness in that to me, in terms of competition. And it's like, because especially at this stage in the game, that person probably otherwise gets to skate by. Because it's like, hey, nobody's coming after me. I'm so terrible at challenges. So I don't mind the idea of a penalty for that. Because we penalize so many other things. And in fact, mostly in this game, penalizes being good at things.
Right.
So I don't mind the idea of injecting some form of punishment into it. But I don't like this form of punishment.
So in your scenario, though, it would have to happen probably at more than one challenge. So like War Dog would have been without a vote until he went home.
Fantastic, right? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Again, I don't need it all the time. If it's just the final 7 thing or final 8, like we're just right in this middle part. It's like, hey, you think that you could just not, be terrible at this and keep, picking off the people that are good. Something might happen. And, I think losing a vote is actually probably a pretty well calibrated thing. Like, 'cause that's really something, but it doesn't necessarily send you home in the game,
Yeah, and I think you would probably want to time it for certain tribals. Like, then it would be the most effective. Although it would, actually, I was going to say it would screw things up because you do have extra votes floating around. But if anything, that probably makes it more enjoyable because then those extra votes might matter, right? Like if someone loses a vote and you have an extra vote, now that's a swing.
Yeah, and, and you still do it the same way. If you choose not to compete at all, then you'll keep your vote. But you will not be immune, right? And so, because I also like that idea of it, and frankly, that might be the reason that it really keeps it from coming back. Is this is run twice, nobody's seen it, and the second time, like all but 2 people are like, you know what, I don't need this, and really, like one of the 2 people also didn't need it. So it's not hard to envision a scenario in the future where like all but 1 person does it.
Yep.
But that, I think, is also interesting to me as long as the penalty isn't exit from the game. It's just like everybody just like free gifts the immunity, and maybe that's the person that like needed it most, and that could be really interesting. Then I'll be like, oh man, why'd you do that? It's like, me, why'd you do that? And it could all that could be interesting. I just don't like the idea of it sending somebody home.
I was actually watching this episode and thinking like, if this was San Juan del Sur, they all would have sat out and then decided who was going to get immunity. Like,
yes,
it would absolutely have been the move in that season because they constantly did that shit. And so I think if something like that happened, though, then Probst would be like, fuck this. Like, no, you guys can't do this. Just as frustrated as he got in San Juan del Sur.
Yeah. But then that could be another prisoner's dilemma, right? So they all go in. We're going to totally do this. It's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then, like Mike in Worlds Apart, and, I don't otherwise want to suggest let's do things Worlds Apart, but they all agree, we're just going to all, bid the same amount so we can get our letters, and then Mike steps back. Like, that could be interesting drama, too, with, real stakes, but not final stakes. So, like, I do think there might be something there, but other than laughing at math, I also don't want this to really continue.
I think we solved it, though. It's you lose your vote. Like, there you go. Free gift. Survivor. That's all yours.
At a time in the game when your vote could be really significant. Yeah.
Yes.
Because, and if you lose your vote, you also lose a shot in the dark. Like, this is a real thing, but it's not everything.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you maybe pull that out, like, at the merge vote, and then, maybe one time. You could probably pull it off twice. Like, why are we giving this free content? We need to start. This is RIP now, by the way. I'm just going to trademark this just in case. That counts as trademarking, right? I'm a lawyer.
I mean, if there's any podcast out there that really shouldn't worry too much about what is trademark.
I mean, fair.
And how about that theme music, though?
All right, so let's talk about the most depressing part of the episode, which was the loss of Drea, my beloved Drea. My wife, we're watching, right? And she's like, she sees a Drea confessional. She's been like intermittently watching this season, hasn't really given much of a shit. She sees Drea talking, and she's like, how did this woman get cast? She sounds so bored to even be there. And I looked at her just like mouth agape, like, what? Some people just don't appreciate greatness. How do you not see how amazing this is? And then the show fucking betrays me by showing Drea getting all lively during a confessional. And my wife's like, oh, is this how she normally is? No, it's not. Why do you think I love her? Because she's not normally like this. So, I mean, I have very much enjoyed this entire season of Drea talking to me like it's the most depressing obligation on her schedule. But, it was a fun little twist to throw that in there of Drea being all lively. But don't do that to me. keep the confessionals sacred with Drea. Just flat line, no emotion whatsoever.
Yeah, it wasn't a visibility spike. It was an emotional spike, which that's one we should have known.
Yep.
You should have put it down in your spreadsheet right there.
That's it.
Game over.
Once she leaned into OTTP, I don't remember the little EGIC bullshit codes. But once she started getting all animated and lively, it's like, oh, fuck. It's the death knell right here.
It's over.
It's done.
And what's interesting is clearly she had made strong emotional connections with these characters. These people that she could never miss an opportunity to let us know that she couldn't care if they live or die. But clearly, she actually did make strong ones, because obviously the way that she goes out and the warmth of both her reaction, but I think even more so the reaction of the others. Because, I actually do have not an issue. I found it very enjoyable, her exit, but it's also another example of a reality show person being like, this is my last moments, I shall cling to it as much as possible. But yeah, like clearly there's been a warmth. So thank you, Survivor, for building this like robotic Terminator character for us. And obviously, she has her part to play, because it's undeniable. Your wife, who's not paying much attention, is just like, what the hell? And I can understand, like, if that's your first experience, when I first was like, man, she actually is kind of dull. And then it just becomes, like this performance piece. It's like, she is entrancingly dull at this.
Yeah. It's just, and the fact is that from watching her, because we also see her interact with other people, and she is lively there. Like, she has personality there, right? And so, because that there's this dramatic shift whenever she goes into confessional mode, it makes it even funnier. Like, it's so much more enjoyable to know, like,
and it's confessional and tribal council, which we did get tonight, where she is just very creepily telling everyone, I observe.
Oh my God, what an amazing little soliloquy there. Just like,
that was amazing.
Absolutely terrifying. And I'm convinced, like, Drea would push me down a flight of stairs to win Survivor, and I'd be like, yes, I respect this. I understand everything about you. She just goes into this, like, laser-focused, tunnel vision, game bot mode, and I'm just like, yes, inject it into my veins. It's so fucking good to watch.
Yeah, it's just pure, like, Survivor sociopathy. It is
so good. And she turns it on and off, which is even better.
Yeah, and again, like, everybody seemed to really, really like her, right? Yep. So, there's that other aspect that they hid from us, and I'm not complaining.
Nope.
And hopefully not many, I haven't seen people complain about it, but this is the thing, like, the editors are, they're shaping characters. Yes, for our enjoyment, they're crafting stories, and appreciate what they were able to do here. It's something unique. It was engagingly, hypnotically devoid of emotion.
I mean, what a way to go. Like, when you're a producer marking out storyboards, be like, okay, now's the time. We need to cut all this high emotion intensity with a Drea confessional. We're going to go flat as hell. Just like, it's beautiful. Well done. They're so good at their jobs on this show.
Yeah, nobody could ever argue otherwise. You were really sad about the loss of Drea. Not me. I loved it. It was exactly what I wanted to happen. Not because of any antipathy towards her, fantastic character, but also an incredible obstacle for, of course, my rooting interest to overcome. So, and again, what a way to go out.
Yes.
One note before we kind of move on to that. Just I loved her. And this is my first impression. I'm reacting. It's like, as soon as the game's over, now the facade's done. Like, the whole pressure's off. It's like, that laser focused superstar, I don't know, like Kobe Bryant, like finally showing some emotion after they win the title or something.
Yep.
It's Marshawn Lynch now being like in commercials and interviews when, like, in his playing career, he's literally saying, I'm only here so I won't get fined in interviews. Like, as soon as she wasn't playing anymore, suddenly, the human comes out, and that was, so much fun.
It was.
A perfect end note. Just, the one issue, and whatever, do what you want. Different exits make this show more engaging. But, like, how she has a note for every single person on her way out. It's like, okay, we get it. But you lost. Get gone. And again, it's not even so much I care about like the secrets she's spoiling, because we're going to get into that. I don't know that she was telling people much they don't already know. It was more like the implication that it's like, you guys don't know what's up. I'll tell you what's up. It's like, you're the one who doesn't know what's up. That's why you're going over there.
And same thing. Like if you throw out a quick bit at one person, right? If you're like, Mike, just so you know, you got my vote if you make it to final 3. Like, okay, fine. Now go get your torch snuffed. But then, like, it goes on and on. Like, names every person and their chances. Like, okay, well, I don't really need for you to issue incomplete grades. Like, you're grading me before the season's done. Stop this.
I didn't even catch what she said to Marianne, because by then I'm like, she's still going.
Yeah,
huh?
exactly. Like, what was this? I did enjoy, though, that, like you said, that the switch flipping, right? As soon as
yes, that was fantastic.
The game's done, it's like, oh, and then she's like, it felt much more genuine than Hai last week, who I thought was trying to mask a little bit of pain. Like, I mean, obviously she was probably upset that she got voted out, but I do feel like that was much more of her actual personality coming out and just joking around and laughing about it. I mean, in fairness, Mike was kind of doing the same thing, because he was like, this is great. Who else voted for me? Like, he can't turn that off either. So, oh no, and that part was great. He's like, you put 2 on me, but it's almost like he had to give her that exit voice again. It's like, you missed your cue. All right, let's wrap it up. It's like the person that doesn't know how to leave the party. Oh wow, it's really getting late, isn't it? Just standing in the doorway.
And then they say some more stuff. Yeah. And I would say this for her versus Hai is she knew it was coming.
Yeah.
The moment her ploy failed. Hai did not know it was coming until like probably a second or third vote showed up. So she had more time to prepare her time. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, it was great. And, again, a unique way to exit, but it was just kind of like, all right, wrap it up now. And I liked her bit with Probst at the end too. So.
I did. Is she the only one that's ever stolen his line? The Tribe Has Spoken line? I feel like she might be.
No, I feel like he's given it to some other.
It would make sense, right? It's been 42 seasons. It feels like it should have come up, but.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't tell you who, but in comments, go ahead. I feel like it's been done before. But here's the question. Should they have voted out Drea? And when we say they, I guess we're mostly just talking about Omar and Lindsay here.
Omar, the only player you care about.
Well, I mean, the only people that were truly involved, like in that we see in the decision making, they are the ones that are deciding. I mean, it's clearly better for Mike to vote out.
Mike's not going to vote out himself.
Drea than Mike. We don't really get this from the perspective of Jonathan and Marianne. Romeo, of course, just learned as it was happening. So yeah, I think we could limit it to Omar and Lindsay here.
I mean, I feel like if you're Omar, you couldn't take out Mike. I mean, you could, certainly. You shouldn't take out Mike, because Mike has established himself as a certain type of person, right? And if you burn him there in that way, it's going to cost you Mike's vote at Final Tribal Council, right? Like,
and possibly more people feeling bad for Mike.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like, Mike doesn't have enough haters that would give you their vote for fucking over Mike like that, right? Like, it'd be different if Mike was wildly unpopular and you screwed him. Like, if Mike's a Randy and you fucked with him on the way out, and people be like, yeah, that's right. Respect, Omar. I'm going to give you my vote for that. Like, no, people like Mike. And, if you do him dirty in front of everybody, like, you might get some respect, but at the same time, people might be like, oh, why would you do Mike like that? You could have just voted him out. You didn't have to, do him wrong. So
steal his stuff and then send him home.
Exactly. Like, I think in this instance, Drea was the much safer move for him.
Yeah, I think for a different kind of player, you could maybe make that argument. Like a Tyson could do that, and people are like, oh, that Tyson, right? This is not what Omar's game has been. This is not why he's been successful, by making such an aggressive move that he would have to then just stone face, and like he would have to become a different player from here on out, which is the same reason why there's no doubt in my mind Mike gets that idol back next week. It's just Omar doesn't need that. Whereas, I do think it was more important to get rid of a player like Drea, who I think had more potential avenues to power than Mike from here on out. I would guess the caveat is that she wouldn't have an idol. If we're talking in the scenario in which he does get the idol from Mike and then votes him out. Whereas Mike still will have an idol, and that could come into play. But like, I just think Drea is a more dangerous player. I think there's going to be opportunities to get rid of Mike. He's never going to win an immunity. I don't think.
Right.
He's never come anywhere close, although maybe the same is true of Drea in that respect. I don't think he had, like, I feel like Drea could maneuver something possibly.
And not only that, but I think if you're Omar, you've seen already how you can subtly manipulate Mike's voting, right? Like,
yeah.
If you know that you have that kind of impact on him, then doing this and saving him and then giving him his idol back, like, you're making yourself safer, if anything. Like, I don't think you make yourself a threat by doing that. Like, if anything, that proves to everybody else, like, man, Omar is down for us, right? He stuck it out. They saw us getting attacked here, our alliance getting attacked by Drea from the inside, and he stood up for us. Awesome. Omar's so on our team, and everybody feels like that. Like, if you make that switch suddenly, it's too dramatic a shift, and I don't think it pays the dividends that you would hope it would.
Yeah, taking out Drea is a team move. Taking out Mike would be an individual move. And frankly, I didn't really like or understand Omar's interest in getting rid of Mike in the first place, even before like all the idol shenanigans and, knowing what may or may not happen with Lindsay. Like, it just seemed like he was getting a little piqued that Mike suddenly was feeling, confident about his actions. And Omar, I think, was like, no, that wasn't you, that was me. And it's like, no, don't be that. Don't do that, Omar. I mean, again, I don't mind the cockiness. Cockiness is great. Tell us that you're running the game because you are. But you don't need to be like, oh, well, he must pay now for, not properly. No. Let him be out there and acting like he did all of this. His, Omar's game is in the shadows. Not so far in the shadows that nobody will be able to appreciate it, but it's just like, that's actually not a threat to you. That's favorable to you. A guy who thinks that your move was his, it won't be that hard to turn that around later. Because what are his moves? He doesn't have any moves.
Right.
So I never liked the idea of targeting Mike in the first place, but as it all comes together, the way it comes together, taking out Drea, I don't think, it's not making any waves, despite what she may have said on her way out.
Right. And as you correctly pointed out, like, I don't know that they're going to invest too much in Drea's exit, like what she's saying on her way out.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because that was a big thing, a big worry. And I think, some of that worry comes from a good place. Everybody recognizes that Omar is amazing and they want him to win. So they get nervous anytime that something may threaten that. So it's like, oh no, she called out Omar. Okay, she called out like 6 people. So let's get into that first.
Mike even said, like, oh, this is the kiss of death when she complimented him. Like, there's multiple things she's thrown out there. And are they going to stay in the heads of those players past 24 hours? Probably not.
Yeah, it's like everybody's freaking out that she's like said, Omar lied to me, and not Mike will win this game, and Lindsay, I'm rooting for you. Like, I think those are far more damaging than, oh, Omar's the only one I told about this, and he betrayed me. And it's like, Drea, they know. That's why you're gone. That's why you weren't able to steal Mike's idol. Mike is well aware that Omar told your secret because he was one of the people he told you to. Lindsay was one of the people Omar told him to. We don't know, but I assume that Jonathan was one of the people Omar told. I'm pretty confident he didn't tell Marianne. We obviously know he didn't tell Romeo. But it's like, this isn't actually as big a news to the remaining players, the big truth bomb that Drea is dropping on her way out, as it is to you, Drea. You're the one learning this later than they are.
Yeah, and if anything, it bolsters Omar's case, right? Because she's just saying, like, I only told Omar. Like, she had this plan that would have been successful, but Omar was loyal to you guys and snuffed it out and, like, turned on me to save the rest of you guys. If that's, again, helping Omar's case to them.
Yeah, this is everybody's like, oh no, now they know he's dangerous. No, now they know what a great ally he is. He didn't hide anything from you guys. This is, again, it might, and previews might even suggest this. Like, Marianne might be like, I'm tired of being out of the loop. But we don't know that she'd direct that at Omar, because a bunch of people kept that secret from her. And Omar's probably been the best one maintaining the relationship. No. That wasn't an act of betrayal in their minds. That was an act of loyalty.
Exactly.
The person he betrayed is the person on the jury.
Well, and then also
and maybe Romeo.
The act of loyalty thing, like, just keep in mind that it seems like, from the perspective that we've gotten so far, almost everyone left thinks that Omar's their number one, right? Or at the very least has a strong enough working relationship with Omar that they feel like they can trust him. And so, yeah, this, again, it's kind of reinforcing this stereotype that people have of Omar of like, oh yeah, loyal, trustworthy, all these things, because, he is running shit and all these people have a bond with him and thus think like, yeah, but he's down for me until he's not, right?
Yeah. And yeah, all that did was prove that he was down. Hey guys, my plan to completely, fool you and take you guys out failed because of Omar isn't actually a dangerous statement.
Yeah.
It's like you have Omar to thank to your continued success in this game. Get him, fellas. No. And like, yeah, to the point of like everybody's connected to Omar. They're not connected to each other. Right? Jonathan and Lindsay, like Lindsay, the thing she wants most in life is Jonathan to be out of this game. Mike, I guess Mike has a connection to Jonathan, but it's clearly closer to Omar. And it was only just made more close. But it's like he saved his ass.
Yep.
Mike handed him an idol. So yeah, that's pretty close. Like nobody's talking to Romeo. So it's like, I'm not even sure where the counter plan, if Drea's words were damaging, and they are not, I don't see how it comes together. It's a bunch of people that don't talk to each other at this point.
I mean, and again,
Marianne and Lindsay, I
Romeo
guess.
is probably the only one that's even talking to Omar at this point. So yeah, I don't see how this is in any way going to negatively affect him. Plus, I think going forward, you still have Jonathan there as like a pretend threat to target because of his challenge skill. Romeo, you can target as a goat. Like, I don't see why Omar comes on anybody's radar for the next vote or two.
Yeah. I don't, like, Marianne would be the only person that I would be worried about. Lindsay is not thinking about getting rid of Omar. All she's thinking about is getting rid of Jonathan.
Exactly.
And then Omar can use that. Hey, Jonathan, this is what Lindsay's up to. Now, Jonathan, who I don't think would come after Omar anyway, that's not really seems to be his MO. Yeah. So it's like Marianne's the only real danger I could see. And it's not a non-danger because she has a way of doing it. But I also see her as somebody who's probably going to be more mad at like Jonathan or Mike. So because they have less of a relationship than Omar has. Now, man, he's running stuff, and it could, again, I don't know if he'll win. There's so much variability in this game, and we're going to get to even like greater variability pretty soon. But like, you want a good indication of how well he's running it, besides the fact that like one of the last things we just saw was somebody telling him that they had this thing that you should never tell anybody about, and then him, completely upending their game as a result. Credit where credit's due. Lindsay came up with the idea first. Is like his confessionals now are like delivered on a throne. He has like rocks on each side for the arms. Like they are framing him as though he is the king of this stuff.
And they've been doing it for a couple episodes, I think, now. So,
yep.
At the very least, last episode, I remember it, but I don't know about before that.
So we had the knowledge is power thing kick in for the second time, and I just wanted to shout out everybody who said that this was the most powerful advantage in the history of Survivor and that was going to break the game. Nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the knowledge and power, or is power thing, has been fine. When it first was introduced, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance, because you never know how these things will necessarily work out. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The hourglass thing, we knew how that would work out. But yeah, I generally try to give these things a chance. I still think it's kind of a weird mechanic that also kind of drops some of the artifice of the show, because you're having basically Propes confirm via production whether someone has an idol or not, which is weird, but fine. But overall,
yeah, because of the way they did it. When it first talked about it, we didn't know the full mechanics. It's like you could just walk up to somebody in camp. Like, you're denying the power of lying, but like it's brass tacks time, so that's a little different.
Yeah, and
when it's at tribal council.
And I think the most important thing, though, is that it's created some entertaining TV, right? Like, that's above all what needs to happen to any game mechanic or twist or advantage that they introduce. You want it to make a more entertaining product on the television. And I think that's happened with this.
Yeah, I remember immediately defending the various possibilities that this thing could have. And I think those that just thought, no, it's super overpowered. You'll never fail. You're only ever going to steal an idol. And it's like, you guys suffer from a lack of imagination. But even I don't know, could envision that like 0 for 2. Of asking and coming up blank for in a season. And this was, I think was a legitimate objection when it happens. Like, well, if you're going to do this, you can't be in seasons where idols via mechanics of the show are basically public knowledge. Even then. So what it turns out is that whatever else you might think about this advantage, it is incredibly aptly named because it's all about knowledge is power. As soon as Omar had that knowledge, he was able to claim the power from it.
But most importantly, it's 0 for 2, same shooting percentage as the Monty Hall problem.
Yeah, which, I guess isn't as bad as the shot in the dark. How about all these things? Now, the hourglass is like 50%. Like 50% of the time, the person who breaks the hourglass wins Survivor. So there's that. And I suppose 100% of the time they're immune. So there's that.
50% of the time works every time. There are still some advantages floating around. More importantly, there's one that is now an idol because with Drea being voted out, Lindsay's amulet over the past 2 votes has now become an idol, which I think also probably prompted Lindsay to be like, how about we turn this on Drea because it benefits her, right?
Yeah, we actually talked this all from the perspective of Omar, maybe solely because of my, bias. But also, I think, he was the one with the information. He had some decisions to make. But it could just be that Lindsay's like, no, I'm not voting for Mike. I want Drea gone. That's what we're doing. In which case, all of that other stuff didn't matter. Because, for her, it's like, no, I want an idol next week. So let's just do that then. You can have one. I can have one. Let's all have idols. Except that, again, Omar's not going to
he's not going to need it, more importantly. So, I mean, technically he'll start next week's episode with it, but I don't think that's going to last.
Yeah. So an important thing to note is Lindsay has an idol next week and next week only.
Correct.
The amulet expires at 6. However, Mike and Marianne's idols expire at 5. So it won't necessarily be that 3 or 4 people will be immune next week, but that potential is there. Plus shots in the dark. I believe everyone left still has theirs. Yeah, because nobody's ever successfully played one. So, that's something. So that's, for me, that's the fear for Omar. It's just that he goes home as a result of being one of, if not the only non-immune player. That could happen, and that would suck. Another potential threat is just, fire making and all of that. Like, otherwise, I don't think anybody is mounting enough votes to get rid of him. So it could all be all this, tricky shit that I'm worried about.
Yeah. And I mean, we can get into some winning percentage chances here. And I think for him, it's just get to final 3, right? There's no...
Drea was, I think, the only person who could have beat him. I think he would have beaten her, but, clearly there was, aspects of her relationships with people that were hidden from us. Although I suppose you could also argue that would factor into the idea that she wasn't winning because, of course, she does not win. We know this. That's
but I think ultimately, just looking around, no matter what happens over the course of the next couple votes, like, I don't know if anybody does something so spectacular in those final votes that's going to put them above Omar in people's minds at Final Tribal Council, right? Because his game is not going to change. He's going to get there playing this exact same game. And again, he's got all these connections. Everyone likes him. So really, it's just get to Final 3 and you'll win. It doesn't matter who you even go with. You can take the strongest players left. It won't matter. You'll probably win. So he's the only one I think I can reasonably say that about. I think with everybody else, you probably have to work through like, oh, could they beat this person? Blah, blah, blah. But he's the one that, like, if he's there, he's winning.
I say maybe if Lindsay takes charge from here on out, I think she would be rootable,
Sure.
Especially because like this jury, and I'd have to do the math on the makeup at that point. They have not seen a woman win in a long time, so it could be that motivation. Like she would have to be like winning all the challenges and like voting out who she wanted, like that. That I think even if she somehow managed against Omar, I think that would be a compelling matchup. But otherwise, it's do what you need to do to get there,
Right.
and he's already done a lot of that. The big worry will be the things that are basically out of his control. One thing I could see happening next week, maybe this is what I'm rooting for, almost certainly. Lindsay wins immunity and plays her idol on Omar. That's not out of the question. Like, I could very easily see that happen. So something to root for because it's going to expire anyway.
Right. And although I feel like a lot of times when that happens, when someone has an expiring idol and they don't need to use it, they often just don't. And it's like, wait, come on, just do it. For the benefit of us viewers who had to speculate on who you might play this on, just do something with it. Don't take a souvenir home. It's worthless.
Yeah. But it's like maybe there's wind because we do see in the previews at least Omar's name's mentioned, which has not even come up remotely until now. And it's like, oh no, I can't let them vote for Omar rather than Jonathan, who I must get rid of more than anything else in the world. So I could see that happening because obviously in this scenario, Jonathan is not immune because Lindsay just won immunity.
So let's break down some other odds here because I feel like there's a bottom tier right here. And I would probably only put 2 people in it at this point. How many would you put in the lowest possible chance tier?
2, and then there's a tier of 1 just above them, and then 3.
Yeah.
That's the math. Yeah.
I mean, there's bottom tier's got to be Romeo and Jonathan, right?
Absolutely. It's hard to see either of them winning, and I think this episode really cemented that. Neither of them were given a favorable edit in the first half of the episode. It was very clearly, this is the reason why nobody will want them to win.
Yeah. Who do you think has a worse chance of winning, though, Romeo or Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say the easy math is like, it's the same. Neither of them have a chance to win. But if somehow we were final 2, I'm pretty confident Jonathan would beat Romeo because, man, like, what are you doing, Romeo? You're doing nothing. Nobody's talking to you. And they all know you as a lazy food stealer. Like, that is... is there a chance to get negative votes? Can people just be like, not Romeo?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's not good. I mean, I think Romeo is probably basically dead last year. Not by a ton, but I do think that, if it was a terrible decision between him and Jonathan, he probably loses there too. So
I suppose there's also a chance that so let's operate in the universe that we exist, the final 3. So now it's Romeo, Jonathan, and Marianne. I think, Marianne wins in that scenario. She hasn't gotten the negative content that Jonathan has of late, and especially in this episode, just like, which is honestly, I don't think that big a deal. I think, in other situations, you just like, this is what happens when people are starving. That's the story. Like, this is the deprivation story. But I think this one was more designed to be like, people really are tired of Jonathan. But I also wonder how this jury would receive Marianne. So, like, in that sense, I think she would beat him. She's been getting actually a lot of good positive content of late. But maybe they'd be like, I mean, he won a lot of challenges and none of us expected him to actually be at the end. And I could see that, like, maybe him winning a close one against her, but I would bet on her if I were to do
right. And be rooting for her, to be fair.
Yes. That is also accurate.
I think Marianne's probably that one who's just above that crowd, right? Like, she's got a better chance, I think, than both of them, but still not in that, like, top tier of players left.
Yeah, I'm just not rolling her out because she could turn it on in these next 2 episodes.
She has an idol.
Right? And she
could do things.
Yeah, so if suddenly she's just like, now it's my time, I'm tired of people just treating me like the appendage to the decisions, and then she goes out there and does it, I think there's still time for that story and that to be a winner story. She's been omnipresent throughout she's one of the major characters of the season. But, like, what she's done so far, I don't think she could beat any of the other 3. and I'm not 100% sure she could beat Jonathan, but I think there's still time for her to completely change the perception of her.
It's the way that she would get to final 3 could determine her winning.
Whereas for Jonathan, like, we know the way he gets to final 3. People have already, like, that's already built into their perceptions of him. And I don't know how, like, much more they would be impressed by it. So, yeah, it would just be more like they're not voting for Romeo. Like, he has 0 votes. Whereas, like, any final 3 combination, I can see Jonathan getting 1 vote, one very specific vote.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can just name him. It's fine. We all know who it is.
But if he gets to the end and Marianne doesn't do anything more than she's done already, and, you know, just by the value of nobody else is ever able to vote Jonathan out, maybe he'd win. But I just, for that is like a more of a theoretical thing, because the show would be treating him differently if that was the case. We know how the show would be treating Jonathan if he were the winner, because we saw it in the first half of the season, right?
And we've seen it in other seasons, to be fair. Like, as you mentioned earlier, Mike and Worlds Apart. Like, there's ways you could have seen Jonathan as the winner.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, like, a lot of what we've seen, besides, you know, him being overly sensitive about implications of being called racist when people are just talking about their own feelings, which I will also say that, like, I believe us on the internet twigged that a little differently than people on the island probably do. It's more just like, yeah, we've gotten a lot of scenes of people's, like, annoyance of him. I guess we did get a lot of that with Mike, too, but it's different. I don't think he's winning.
Nor do I. So really the top tier is just, you know, and that's, I think, what it's going to come down to. It's Lindsay, it's Omar, and it's Mike. And it's a matter of how this shakes out. As I said, I think if Omar gets to the final 3, it doesn't matter. If he could be against those other 2, and he would still win. I'm not saying he'd shut them out, but he would still win. It's just, for those other 2, they need to determine who they want to sit next to, right? Like, I think Lindsay versus Mike versus a third, as long as it's not Omar, is interesting, because I don't know how necessarily that breaks down. I think they're both very well liked. They would have played a very specific type of game that fits their personality to get there. And both of those types of games would be respected by people on the jury. So that would be interesting if it does break out that way. But
yeah, I can see like a matchup like that really coming down to who won that Final 4 challenge. Who was the decision maker of eliminating, like, Omar, basically. Or it could be they credit the person who, like, does it in fire versus the person who voted it out. Yeah, because, like, Omar getting to the end would be a confirmation of the story we've been getting and the perception that people are already, like, after the fact getting of him. Like, if he's there, he did what he needed to do. And, you know, even if it's Lindsay, like, you know, I took out Jonathan, I won these immunities. It's like, yeah, but you brought Omar.
Right.
Clearly, he tricked you like he tricked us. Because you thought he wasn't... Because, like, Omar's only... I think he only gets there if either he wins his way or somebody brings him. I don't know if he... I guess we never know how good people are at starting fire.
Right.
But so it's like, yeah, if he gets there, just be like, yeah, see, that's what he did. That was his game. Everybody thought he wasn't the threat, but he is. And we all realized that after he sent us packing. You haven't realized that because you failed to
And
send
the
him
other
packing.
thing is, we've seen him talking in confessionals, so we know that he will know how to sell it, right? Once he gets into the final tribal council, he will know how to market his game to the people on that jury and say, okay, well, here's the type of person I am. Here's who you know me as. Here's how I played my game within these constraints of who you know me as. And I played the absolute perfect game for the type of person that I am. And, you know, I deserve the win.
There's an intentionality to what he's doing. It's not just kind of happening and like, I'm just happy to be here and, you know, I'm just making friends and nobody wants to vote it out. Like, he is planning his moves and setting up, and he's well aware of, you know, the connection building and what connections he needs and which ones he needs to let go and what's, you know, a threat to those connections. Like, Romeo is here because Omar had use of him. That's it. All right. Otherwise, he would have been voted out and Roxroy would still be here. And Omar was like, no, Omar is useful to me. Roxroy clearly isn't. So let's make that happen. So, yeah, I think he would, you know, unless somehow, and like, this is the people that we just saw, whooping it up at a vote out, unless somehow suddenly they just become so bitter at him. And I just don't see it with this group.
Yeah, I struggle to see that from this group too. I mean, I think, especially having had some time to chill at Ponderosa, they'd probably be good, right?
Yeah.
So even if there was any lingering bitterness after a couple days, hanging out, drinking, eating food, getting actual sleep, they're fine.
But again, like, I'm not saying he's going to win. There's so many things now that'll be out of his hands. The idol, he could just be without an idol and get bounced out. He could lose fire making. Like, man, when he doesn't win because of those things, I will now join everybody in ranting against the show and the way that they perverted all of the intentions of this show. But for now, I'm keeping a positive outlook.
Yeah, and for the other two, Mike is going to get to the end by being the Mike guy, right? Like, he's going to be that, like, I'm a man of my word, blah, 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 which is a shtick that doesn't often work, but because it plays fairly genuine with him, I think it could, and he does seem to have those bonds with people, and he can play up there like, oh, I'm the old guy out here, you guys, I was so much older than you, and you kids don't even understand how hard it was, and ha ha ha, just dad jokey type humor with them, and they'd be like, oh, you know what, Mike's a good guy, I could vote for Mike, he's right, he played the best old man Mike game that could be played. Lindsay, similarly, I think if she gets to the end, it's probably because she was more active in some phase. She either wins some challenges, she gets a little sneaky and takes out, whoever it might be, Mike, Omar, whoever it is, in a way that she can publicly take credit for. Like, that's probably all it takes.
Yeah, if she's able to get a big hit on the way in, then all these, especially the game type player, would be like, yeah, see, she was really running things. That's what I would have done. That's what juries want. It could go either way for Mike. Yeah, it could be like people genuinely like him. He's made genuine connections. Or that could be where the rancor comes from, right? It's like, you gave me your word and here I am. And it'll be interesting to see how effectively he's able to address that, because a lot of jurors just clam up at that time when they're faced with the genuine hurt and anger from their reactions. He's been good with us, at least, and when interacting with people that just recently betrayed him that aren't named Chanel, be like, hey, it was just a game move, so it's possible. But I could also be like, it'll depend on how he gets there. If he just gets there because 3 other people were deemed, more threatening than he, then they might just be like, Mike, you never really knew what was going on and you betrayed me. But if he gets there because he took somebody out, then I think they'd be like, oh, look at that. The guy we thought was just, Mr. Honest and would do nothing. It'll be so easy to play. Really had some game, and I respect it. So I think there's a lot of still interesting paths for this to go out. So of course, what instead will happen is an advantage getting next week.
Yeah, and then your favorite players go home. Yeah, and I think also Mike, just very conveniently for him, seems to have a decent alignment with Jonathan. And so thus it makes sense for Mike to be going to the end with Jonathan, right? And he can sell it as it's this strong, I wanted to go against strong players. And really, Jonathan is only strong in the physical sense. So it behooves Mike to sit next to him, because I don't think that's going to win a whole lot of jury votes for Jonathan. So his loyalty shtick kind of works out because of who he'd be loyal to in that scenario.
Yeah, and I just hope that Omar out-loyals Mike. It's come on, it was me and you day one. It's actually another note on Drea's, on her parting words is Jonathan, I was never coming after you. Thus implied you should feel bad for doing the same. It's well, that's nice. You knew you were going to beat him. He can't say the same.
Shit, you know what I just realized?
It's not an equal relationship.
I just came up with a scenario that might make you just cheer, fist pump cheer, watching it happen. Say we've got Mike and he's making the final call, right? It's who's going to go to the end? He can take Omar with him, or he can take Jonathan. And Omar gives him the big pitch. He's like, listen, buddy, we're all about your loyalty, right? We've been loyal. Look at how I looked out for you. I took that idol from you. I gave it right back. This is all about loyalty and respect and trust. And that convinces him. And then Jonathan goes home and Omar just runs roughshod over that final tribal council. Like, by duping Mike into taking him, the Tony scenario with Wu all over again with Omar. Like, come on, how exciting would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think you also just really shine why it was the right move to keep Mike in a way that, like, you know, we kind of hinted at, but we didn't put together in the moment. Because we're like, of course he has to give it back. It's just too aggressive a move for what's comfortable for Omar's game. But no, yeah, by giving it back, by saving Mike, he might finally give Mike that loyal partner that he's been like kind of searching for the entire game, right? He thought he had it in Daniel. No. He probably had it in Jenny, but that didn't pay off. He thought it had it in High. I mean, he kind of did, but he didn't realize that he did. So now, like, he has this tangible thing to be like, Omar, that guy, his word is his bond, you know, and they have that pizza and family, you know, viewing party to like really cinch it in. And it's like, that guy he saved me. I wouldn't even be in this game if it wasn't for him. You know, nothing's going to make me ever turn on that Omar. Like, I could see that happening next week. That very confessional. Oh my God. I love Omar so much.
I'm just saying, like,
in his emu shirt, not ostrich.
We've been patiently corrected by a avian loving follower
who's probably like, yeah, but you're still pronouncing it wrong. I don't care, man. In this part of the world, we say emu.
I think it was like a mew. Anyway, I've seen them in real life before, outside of zoos, which is wild. It's Florida here that people have them as pets.
They're basically dinosaurs. Those things are like terrifying.
It is the dumbest fucking state.
No notes. No objections here.
Anyway, any more to add on this episode before we get to some plugs here?
Not to the episode. No, I think we covered it fairly well.
All right. So if you want to discuss this episode or this podcast, you can, of course, go to purplerockpodcast.com and you can find us on Twitter. The show is at Purple Rock Pod. I'm at Purple Rock John, and Andy is at Purple Rock Andy. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
Happy birthday to Purple Rock Emma. You can wish her happy birthday at Purple Rock Emma. I can't believe you didn't say happy birthday. I'm kind of embarrassed.
Oh, man. I didn't need to. I didn't need to just do this public performance of it because obviously I got there first. Well, second technically, but we'll say first out of us two.
It's because, again, I'm more about the public displays of recognizing when birthdays come. I don't know if I want to go as far as affection. That seems
listen.
much.
I posted pictures of French fries in the Slack chat today, so I feel like if anything, I gave the greater gift.
You remember when she was like young?
Nope.
No, I mean it's so far ago that who could even remember because she clearly isn't now.
Ancient history at this point. And let's make this podcast ancient history. Hit some theme music.